Morning, everyone.
Morning.
So we're doing a series called Thank God It's Monday. We're talking about the whole Monday to Friday work side of life. And this week I was on the phone to a certain cable, telephone and internet provider because I wanted to discuss an issue with my account. And once I eventually got through to a human being, and after that human being confirmed that I was me, he then launched into a breathless monologue in which I was completely superfluous. The conversation went something like this. Thank you for confirming your identity, Mr. McClean. Furious typing on the keyboard. I see you haven't signed up for paperless billing. Let me just take care of that for you. More typing. Then, I see you don't have cable, actually. Let me see. Yeah, I can get you that for $15 a month. Good for 6 months. Yep. That's the way to go there. More typing. Then without taking a breath, he's like, now let me just go to another screen here and I'll look at your internet. Yeah, I see your bandwidth is pretty good there. No need to make any changes. Let me just... And I'm listening to this long speech of which I was not a part. And I'm wondering when we get to the bit in the conversation when you stop talking and ask me why I called. I'm wondering where you say, how can I help you? And to me this was a huge business fail because he didn't make a connection with me on a human level. And we all need those connections. Whatever business or career you think you're in, you're not actually in that business. You're not in the making things business, you're not in the selling things business, you're not in the passing on information business, you're not in the answering phone calls business, you're in the people business. And I think business works best when you put people first and business second. This is why Facebook and Instagram just took off when they did the way they did. We are designed for human connections. We are longing for human connections. And the deeper they are and the more meaningful they are, the happier we feel. And the happier we feel, the better we perform. The better we are. Now, when the guy at the cable company failed to make any connection whatsoever with me, I didn't blame him. I'm just sitting on the other end of the phone smiling like someone who knows better. Rare feeling for me. Because I know that what happened wasn't his fault. It was his boss's fault. There was a failure of leadership somewhere at his company. You see, the reason he treated me like a number was because I'll bet that's how he gets treated at work by his bosses. I'll bet the reason he didn't care about my needs was because someone at his work didn't care about his. This is a failure at every level. And this morning I want to teach you and learn with you a style of leadership that I think is both effective in the marketplace and recognizably Christian. And as a basis for this, I want us to look again at a verse we looked at in passing 2 Sundays ago, Colossians chapter 4 and verse 1. Now, the context here is that Paul is teaching the church a wide variety of subjects, many of which are intrusive. And I use the word intrusive because I think we can all handle a religion that can be safely confined to that hour we spend in church on a Sunday. But we begin to feel a little uncomfortable when that religion leaks out of the church hour into the 40-50 hours a week we spend at work Monday to Friday. And I think that was very much the experience of the people to whom Paul is writing in this particular sentence. Because in this sentence, he's writing to business people about their business. This is an immediately sensitive subject matter. You can imagine their response. Paul, I don't mind coming to church on a Sunday, quite enjoy it. I don't mind learning about specifically religious subjects like the Trinity, or stories about Jesus, or issues of morality. I like hearing about that on a Sunday from 10:30 to 11:30. But don't you dare talk about my business, because my business is my business. Don't dare talk about how I perform at my work, because how I perform has got nothing to do with my religion or beliefs or my faith. Let's leave those two separate, please. Okay, so in this sentence, Paul is talking to business people who own slaves, as you can see. Now, this is an immediately sensitive and offensive subject to us, and rightly so. But in the first century, it wasn't. In the first century, slaves were an accepted part of life, and a huge part of life. For example, in the period when the New Testament is written, approximately 1 in 4 people in the Roman Empire are slaves, and 1 in 3 people in the country of Italy are slaves. And from the perspective of the business leaders who own these slaves, slaves are awesome. Because once you shell out the capital to buy one, you pretty much then own them for life, and you're spared the monthly inconveniences of salaries and benefits and pensions and so on and so forth. All you're required to do if you own slaves is give them a place to sleep. Doesn't have to be fancy, better if it's not, they'll just get used to it, and some food to eat. And so the value of a slave, if you're one of these people who's reading Paul's letter, the value of a slave, listen, the value of a slave is solely limited to his or her contribution to the business. What matters are numbers. Last quarter's sales reports, they matter. The amount of money returned to the shareholders, that amount matters. The amount of money I can pay myself as a dividend at the end of the year, that number matters. It's the number that matters. It's the number that matters. The only value the slave has is how that slave contributes to this number. The value is in the number, not in the person, not in the slave. The equation is simple. I've given you something to eat. I've given you somewhere to sleep. That's my end of the deal. Now your only value is contributing to my number. Does that inhumanity sound like any world you know? Me either. Listen. Here's what can happen. Tomorrow morning, I can buy shares in a company, and I can intend to hold those shares for 2 weeks and hope at the end of the 2 weeks to flip them and make a profit. For those 2 weeks in our economy, I am more important than the guy who for the last 15 years has showed up every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning to offer his blood, sweat and tears for that company. Does that sound human to you? Does it sound even remotely Christian? This is the world Paul is speaking to. People don't matter. Numbers do. And into that context, Paul writes, and he says to these slave owners who are all about the numbers, "Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and what is fair." Key word there, I think, is provide. In the first century, the market expectations are that a boss will provide his slaves with a place to sleep and some food to eat. That's the deal. Slaves aren't people, they're commodities. They are machines who need the fuel of sleep and the fuel of food. Numbers on a list of company assets. Your sole value is to contribute to the end number. And in this historical context, the concept of rightness and fairness never applied to the relationship between master and slave. For these people, right and fair is how you treat your friends. Right and fair is how you treat your customers. Right and fair is how you treat the people you regard as your equals in society. Slaves are none of the above. They're just slaves. And yet here is the problem with the Bible so often. It doesn't accept what's normal in our culture as being okay and normal. In many times and many places, it stands on the toes of what we think is normal and says, that is wrong. And I know you've lived with the wrongness for so long you don't even notice anymore, but it ain't right. And we struggle with it. And so, intruding with, I think, 2 big feet into the business of these business leaders, Paul says, guys, we all know what the industry standard is. We all know what's accepted, and we're all doing it. You're providing your slaves with a place to sleep, good for you. You're providing them with food to eat, good for you. So you're pretty much on the median. You're pretty much doing the average that everyone else in the market is doing, good for you. You're functioning as leaders. You're getting results, you're making products, you're making sales, good for you. You are doing your thing. But here's the problem I have with you. You're not doing your thing as Christians. You're not doing it in the best way that it can be done. You see, you are people who follow Christ. And if you are serious about following Christ, you need to do a little bit more than what's normal. So you need to go beyond providing food and sleep. You need to provide what's right and what's fair. You need to stop treating people as though they were less important than numbers and start treating them right, treating them fair. You're going to have to make the transition, he seems to be saying, from being a leader who gets the job done to being a leader who gets the job done by treating the people through whom he gets the job done properly. Now, I don't know what that looked like in their world, because he doesn't explain it beyond using these 2 words, right and fair. But I can only imagine how it must have complicated things. I can only imagine the headspin that these people left church in that morning. I mean, if their competitors didn't treat people right and fair, if their customers didn't treat people right and fair, if the businesses on their supply chain didn't treat people right and fair, and suddenly they started doing those things, where would that leave them in the market? Where would that leave their income and their numbers? How would that look at the end of the quarter? And to them, the numbers were all that mattered. The people who read this sentence in the first century could justifiably have said, Paul, this is an unwelcome intrusion into the real world. You see, Paul, our business exists to do one thing, to make money. Our business exists to make widgets, to sell things. It's here to have a really nice number at the end of the day. It does not exist to be right. It does not exist to be fair. It does not exist for people. And that is our world too. We see no value in people beyond dollars and cents, and we ourselves in the market have no value beyond dollars and cents. And we've lived with it for so long that it's normal, and it has to be wrong. Think about it like this. In the military, we reward people who sacrifice themselves for others. So the top medal in Canada is the Victoria Cross, and the Victoria Cross is so hard to get that most people die getting it. And in almost 100% of cases, the people who are awarded this medal, they like throw themselves on a grenade or something. They sacrifice themselves so that someone else can be okay. They sacrifice themselves for someone else's gain. But in business, we reward people who sacrifice others so that they might gain. We applaud it when business leaders sacrifice others so that we might gain. This seems backward to me. Do you know what I think is almost universally said in the military at an awards ceremony? Some guy, some 19-year-old guy has just done something crazy in Afghanistan, and they're putting a medal on his chest. And in almost 100% of cases, the guy or the girl says something like this: I was just doing what they would have done for me. I know my buddies would have done this for me. All my buddies would have done the same. How badly would you like to work in an organization where you knew that everyone else would take a bullet for you? Where everyone else would sacrifice themselves for your gain? How efficient and effective and awesome would that organization be? We are designed deliberately to be social animals who work together to get things done. And the best workplaces are the workplaces where we all feel safe, where we all feel that we have one another's back. And the best leaders are the leaders who create safety. But that doesn't mean there's not danger. There's always danger. There's always the ebbs and flows of the economy trying to erode our business. There's always competition trying to take it away from us. There's always technology trying to make us redundant. There's always danger. It's nothing personal. It's just the way the world spins. But the difference between success and failure often is how safe people feel on the inside of the business. Aesop said it well. You perhaps remember the children's book you read as a child. Remember the story he told? There's 4 oxen in a field, and they put their backs together and face outward. And so whenever the lion tries to eat them, the lion, from whatever angle he attacks at, is always met by a horn. And however, due to disagreements and differences over time, the oxen go their separate ways to different parts of the field, and as individuals the lion is able to pick them off. When we don't feel safe at work, when we don't feel valued, when we don't feel trusted, here's what happens. We are forced to expend energy protecting ourselves. If you go to work tomorrow morning and you have to worry about politics, or someone taking credit for your ideas, or what mood your boss is going to be in, how much are you not doing your job tomorrow? You can't. You're not expending energy on what's out there. You're expending energy watching your own back, protecting your own skin. What's supposed to happen is I'm supposed to have this office, and I'm supposed to go to work feeling inspired, to do the best I can, to be as creative as I can, as enthusiastic I can. But when I get there, I'm just watching my back all the time. I have to be careful what I say. I'm not honest. I'm scared someone's going to take credit for my ideas. And so the energy I should be spending on the dangers out there, I'm instead spending worrying about things I should never have to worry about. We have courses on management. I'm sure at some point in your career you've been sent, or someone you work for has been sent on a management course. And to me it's the stupidest thing in the world. Management courses. I've never met a single person who gets up in the morning and looks forward to going to work to be managed. People want to be led. And they want to be led by people who they know have their back, who they know will sacrifice themselves for their gain, who will put them first, who think they're more important than numbers, who make them feel safe. When you have a leader like that, you'll take a bullet for that leader. You'll do anything for that leader. I think one of the most important values of the workplace is that, and it is quintessentially Christian, is that every person is worthy of kindness. It's not about people, it's not about numbers, it's about people. It's not about the project, it's about people. And those people are worth treating right and fair. And so the writer says to his church, you should do that at your work because you know that you, just like your slaves, just like the people you treat like dirt, you also have a master in heaven. So Paul is asking his leaders in the church to see the bigger picture, I suppose. He's saying to them, one day, you're going to have to, go to heaven, and there'll be that pearly gate situation, and you're going to have to answer for how you treated people. And you can bet your bottom dollar on that day, the dollar won't count. You can bet on that big final assessment, no one up there is going to care about the sales numbers or the dividends or any of those things that you think are so important. Up there, it's going to be all about how you treated people. People. Let me make a few things I've been thinking this week about what makes good Christian leadership and management. I think first of all, it's important to have an uncompromising character. I think it's important to be the kind of person who says, I'm going to do what's right, even when it's hard. In fact, that's really the only time doing the right thing counts. It's easy to do the right thing when it's easy. Yep. But when it's hard, that's the difference. And here's why this matters. The people who work for you, and this applies, I think, equally well to the home, to the family. The people who look to you, they need to know that you're a leader worth following. They need to know that you're answerable to a standard of right and wrong that isn't like the normal, that'll shaft them for the expediency of a quick profit. I read a study this week. It was one of those studies, things that make the ideal leader. And that study said that what people value most in their managers are managers who have integrity. So people were asked to choose the words that best describes their ideal leaders. And the top word they chose wasn't brilliance, it wasn't skill, it wasn't decisiveness, it was honesty. And as followers of Jesus, I think we should be willing to commit to a standard of integrity with people. If it's good news, I'll tell you like it is. I'm not going to oversell it. If it's bad news, I'll tell you why. If I need to let you go, I'll tell you the whole story. It's important that our inner, deep human need to be persons of integrity is given a far higher priority than our need to pay the bills. We need to sleep well with ourselves at night. This makes us better. Secondly, I think that to be a successful Christian leader, and this is absolutely Christian, perhaps uniquely so, you have to put people first, yourself second. Jesus defined great leadership as being a service not to the demands of the market, but to the people whom one serves as leader. Jesus said, whoever would be great among you must be a servant. Why? Because in the eyes of heaven, people are not commodities to be used. They are of intrinsic value, each one worthy of kindness, no matter who they are. There was a devotional book I used to read by a guy called Oswald Sanders, and he said that true leadership is not achieved by reducing men to one's service, but in giving oneself in service to them. Now here's the difficult thing about all this, of course. You still have to do your job. Sales still have to get made. Widgets still have to get produced. Projects still have to get finished. Your company still has to do whatever it is your company has to do, and it has to do it better than everyone else. But in addition to that, You need to find a way of doing it that puts people first, everything else second. Paul said elsewhere in the Bible, each of you must look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. This is how you're to go to work tomorrow, looking not just to you, but to the people around you. How you can help them, how you can help them win, help them gain. Now, leaders, managers, whatever, they get perks, right? They get bigger offices and drive better cars and bigger salaries, and no one has a problem with that. I don't think anyone here has a problem that their boss earns more than they do. But there's an ingrained expectation, it's ancient, it actually goes back to caveman times, that with your greater perks come greater responsibilities. So going back, a few thousand years ago, there would be a tribe of people, and eventually an alpha male would appear in the tribe. The tribe would go hunting for a woolly mammoth, and they'd bring home the woolly mammoth, and the alpha male would get first pick. He'd get the T-bone. Now some of you are thinking about a T-bone on a mammoth, and you're not going to get out of that thought for hours. And everyone in the tribe is okay with this, but there's an understanding that when danger threatens the tribe, the alpha male, he's first out there with his club. And we have that expectation in the market too. We're okay with the perks and all that, but there's an expectation that you'll do more work, that you'll sweat more, that you'll bleed more, and that you'll put yourself last, and that you'll take care of us, that you'll look after us. And that's hardwired into us. And that's why it offends us so much when bosses sacrifice us for themselves. That's why back in 2008 in the crash, we loved to hate those bankers. Remember that? And the reason we loved to hate them, the reason we felt all that righteous indignation, was because we know that they made all that money by allowing people to get sacrificed. In fact, in the worst cases, we know that they made all that money by sacrificing people. This is against the rules of our human nature. And we hate it. They're supposed to sacrifice themselves for us, never the other way around. This is why we don't trust them. I think, and this isn't particularly Christian, this I think just makes sense. I think that when you put people before business, the business will take care of itself. I was in a coffee shop this week. It was in Bradford or Bradford. I always get those mixed up. One of those, doesn't matter where it was. And it was a proper coffee shop, it wasn't one of those, it wasn't like the kind of place where you could get caramel frappuccino. It was like a proper coffee shop. Old Italian guys in shell suits sitting around a table, that kind of place. A good coffee shop. And I walk in, and there's a guy behind the counter, and I ask the guy for an espresso. Of course. And the guy, he was a young guy, he looks at me nervously and says, "I'll just need to go and get someone to make that for you." I'm like, "Huh? Why can't you make it?" He says, "Oh man, I'm just, seriously," he said this, "I'm scared. If I get it wrong, my boss just shouts at me." Fail. Fail. Because you as a boss have created that kind of environment in your workplace, your people are scared. They don't feel safe. It's not safe for them to make a mistake. It's not safe for them to try. And because you've created that environment, Now I'm not getting my coffee. Everyone loses, nobody wins. Fail. So the big challenge, I think, of what Paul says in this simple sentence is to try to figure out how it's going to look for us this week to go to wherever it is we work and treat every person as though they are worth kindness. Like they actually matter. That has to be a better way. Like I was listening to an article on the radio this week. There was some bank, just caught the tail end of it. There was some bank who laid off 1,300 people, and it was one of those business programs. And the people talking in the program were positive about this. Well, the market's responding quite well to this news, and 1,300 people, it's going to save money. And so far, the shares have responded positively to. And it was somehow positive that 1,300 people are losing their job. And I'm listening to this thinking, what is wrong with you? 1,300 human beings lost their job so that a bank who made 60 billion profit can make an extra few million. And you think that's good. You're patting the guy who made that decision on the shoulder. Probably going to give him a bonus. That's sick. That's backwards. That's saying numbers matter more than people. And that, as Christians, is something we cannot say. We cannot be okay with that. So, try it at your work this week. Let me know how it goes. Put people first. Jesus loves people. Every single one of them. Worthy of kindness. Sacrifice so that they may gain. Not your life, I hope. But credit. Ideas, time, a smile, help out. Be honest. You don't like the atmosphere where you work? Change it. Change it. Next week we're going to talk about how we handle it at work when our boss is an idiot. Probably more relevant. Let's pray then, let's go. Heavenly Father, it's particularly easy for us to be Christians on a Sunday for a morning. It requires so little of us to lift our voices in song, to give our ears to the teaching of your word. It's not hard. We acknowledge that the hard bit comes when we go home to families that are less than perfect. When we go to offices that are not conducive to our well-being, and certainly not to our Christianity. When we face struggles that threaten to diminish us. In these difficult corners of our lives, our faith is hard. But we embrace that hardness as we embrace our faith. We ask for strength, for peace, for guidance. We acknowledge that you call us to a higher way. So for another day and for another week, we will keep on believing, keep on hoping, keep on reaching to the higher standard that you call us to, and to the very end of our time. Amen.